A newly released clip from an ITV interview with Rishi Sunak has revealed what the Prime Minister said to our correspondent when he returned early from the D-Day events in Normandy, which led to a huge backlash.
Yeah, we're going to ask the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps about this in just a moment. So let's remind you, when Paul Brand sat down with Rishi Sunak last Thursday evening, here's a reminder of what the Prime Minister said to him.
Very nice to see you. Hey, sorry to have
well,
kept
thanks
you.
No, not at all. I know you've been in Normandy.
Yeah, it all just ran over. It was incredible, but it just ran over everything.
I'm sure it was
so apologies for keeping you.
No, not at all. I'm sure it was a powerful trip. I mean, so pertinent as well this year, you know, considering what's happened in Ukraine.
Yeah, which I haven't seen President Biden's remarks, but I think that's kind of the echo, I think, what he said.
Did you get to meet any of the veterans, or were you...
Oh, no,
did you
gosh,
just
lots.
have to do the ceremonial...
Lots, over yesterday and today.
Yeah,
I've already spoke to almost everyone that was there, I hope.
Let's speak to the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps. Very good morning to you. The
Morning.
thing that strikes us, and I imagine a number of viewers, is just the sort of tone of that. It's almost like dealing with the D-Day events running over, as if that was an inconvenience in trying to get to an interview on time. Can you understand why this doesn't make things better in some people's minds?
I think the Prime Minister quite rightly reflected on that and apologised for it, which I thought was the smart of him to do, the right thing to do, and showed his intention. And as he says, actually in that actual clip, the entire event, and I was actually at them all, was absolutely remarkable. I mean, it was incredible to meet British veterans. The part that he now famously missed wasn't with the British veterans at all. He had met them all beforehand. And I think absolutely right that he apologised. But I do also think the real question is what's in his heart. Here's a Prime Minister who for the first time has put a veterans minister in his own cabinet. So determined has he been to work for the interests of veterans that he's decided to make a place around the cabinet table. And frankly, I think that is worth a lot more than one mistake.
I appreciate what you're saying, Grant Shapps, but the trouble is we can only see what's in his heart by measuring his actions. And he came home early from those events. I mean, even as you say, you reflect back on that remarkable interview that Paul Brand did, which we can all see tonight at 7 o'clock. He asks about President Biden, and Rishi Sunak says, I haven't seen President Biden's remarks. He wasn't in the photograph. He wasn't there at a critical moment during the day. Now, you know, we judge him by that, don't we?
So just to be clear, because I think there's some confusion there, I was at that event. President Biden didn't speak at the event, so I'm not sure which remarks were being referred to. President Biden didn't speak at that event at all. There were no British veterans there. The Prime Minister did go to Portsmouth, and he spoke there and met with the veterans. He then came to Normandy, met with the veterans in the most extraordinary ceremony, which I will never forget, actually. The Prime Minister was there, the King was there, at our new memorial in Normandy, where the Brits came abroad. He then went from there to a lunch, and the luncheon was with the veterans again, met with all of them. He then went from there to the Churchill Educational Centre, which has been opened at the site because, of course, we are losing those veterans now, and we want to make sure that future generations can be educated. And he went and helped with the inauguration, essentially, of that Churchill Education Centre.
I know that you're doing your very best to point out exactly what the Prime Minister did do. The trouble is that the voters don't see anything other than he left early. How much do you regret, as the person in charge of our defence, at a day when it was those who risked their lives to defend our country? Some of them feel and have spoken openly about how they feel let down. That generation feel let down by the Prime Minister's actions last Thursday. How much do you regret what happened?
Well, look, I regret it because he has already apologised. But to be absolutely clear, what this Prime Minister has done for veterans has been, I think, second to none with anyone beforehand. the military covenant extended. Somebody sat around his cabinet table. He didn't have to make space around his cabinet table. He didn't do this in the last few days. He did it a year and a half ago. And Johnny Mercer is that minister. The many different ways in which we've assisted with veterans affairs, including, for example, rail cards introduced for them, better taxation treatment, and much more besides. No government has done more. Okay. So I'm really sad that
I understand. Okay, but the point is you're really sad about what happened.
Yeah, but it's what's in his heart, I think, which is important. He recognised that it was a mistake to do it. I think I take him at his word. He did meet all the British veterans. He's done for veterans more than us, whether at this particular event. I think way outweighs not being invented, which, by the way, Biden didn't speak. So I'm not sure where.
Sadly, I mean, it was the Prime Minister who brought that up. I haven't seen President Biden's remarks, but that's the kind of echo. It was his comment.
Let's turn, Mr. Schatz, to your manifesto yesterday. First time we had a chance to talk to you about this. Your commitment, you're going to require all 18-year-olds to do some form of service. That's going to include 30,000 18-year-olds going into our armed forces to do a form of national service. You'll know that just a few weeks ago, the Ministry of Defence issued a statement saying the demanding, increasingly technical nature of defence today is such that we require highly trained professional men and women in our regular and reserved armed forces, and the government has no current plans to reintroduce such a service. So clearly it was a change. Was it difficult for you to sign up to the Prime Minister's idea of national service for 18-year-olds, and did you have opposition from the armed forces leaders to that proposal?
So, first of all, I mean, the whole point of manifestos, or indeed elections, this came out just before manifestos, is to present your new ideas to the country. So, quite clearly, there has to be a moment at which you say, this is now something that we want to do. We hadn't talked about that before. Secondly, the wider national service announcement was actually far more than just about the military. Yes, by the end of the next parliament, we'd aim to have 30,000 places, which I think would be much sought after, by the way, for experience with the military. But actually, the vast majority of people would be doing their work through citizen service, through many other, RNLI or through St. John's or Scouting or many other things.
Just to ask you about your responsibility here, which is defence. We're talking here about 30,000 new 18-year-olds every year coming into the armed forces. Do you have accommodation to house 30,000 recruits? What will it do to the whole training regime? And presumably the expense and the disruption and the diversion within the armed forces away from training professional soldiers to 30,000 every year, 18-year-olds. I mean, it's hugely expensive and very disruptive.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I came in as Defence Secretary and I had three objectives. One was to raise our expenditure to 2.5% of our GDP, gross domestic product, which I've done. We've set that objective. Second was to support Ukraine, and we've increased our funding and support to Ukraine because I think it's existentially important that Putin doesn't win that war to the world.
And the third thing, 30,000 young people.
And I was going to say, and the third thing is the problem of recruitment for our armed services. And so from a Defence Secretary's point of view, the very concept of being able to introduce 30,000 people for experience, they're not going to be, this is a 25-day in a year thing.
I feel as though you're not answering my question. Have you got the accommodation for 30,000 young people every year extra?
Let me get to the end of the question.
30,000? I feel as though you're talking about other things and not talking about the thing I'm asking you.
I will never get to the end of the question unless you let me answer it.
Go on, then.
The reason why this is, I think, so important is it is a commitment to do exactly that, to build the accommodation, to find the space, to ensure that we can do it. It's not as you presented 30,000 people for over an entire year.